Welcome to Stick to Farming, the podcast from Sigs & Co, where we dive into the big questions shaping farming in the southwest and across the UK. I'm your host, Charlie Siggs. Today, we're tackling a question that sparks plenty of debate on farms and at markets. To wool or not to wool? Is there still a future for wool as a product from UK sheep farming, or is it time to rethink its role entirely? We've brought together a fantastic panel of guests who know this subject inside and out. First up, we have Leslie Pryor, who has been breeding Australian Merinos in the UK for 20 years and is known for her work promoting wool in general internationally. Joining us is Richard Stanbury, a southwest sheep farmer with years of experience balancing the books and managing flocks. We're also pleased to welcome Peter Morris, who has long been involved in marketing and representing the interest of sheep producers. And finally, from the Sigs & Co team, we have James Siggs, who works closely with farmers on business decisions and knows how wool stacks up, or doesn't, in the farm accounts. Let's start with the basics. Is wool paying its way in UK sheep farming today? Leslie, from your perspective working with specialist fibres, do you see value that perhaps being overlooked?
Yeah, I think there are issues around this, Charlie. I mean, wool is a minority fibre in the world apparel market. It's less than 1% of world fibre usage. The rest of fibres are synthetics and other natural fibres like cotton. So wool is a minute proportion of world fibre usage these days, and we have to bear that in mind. We're up against it with synthetics. And wool has lost ground, undoubtedly. However, that's not to say it's a lost cause. It's fighting back. And for the right types of wool, there is a very good market. In fact, an incredibly good market. British wool, in fact, general British wool has come up again quite recently. This very week, it's come up again to £1.18 a kilo, greasy, and that's a much higher price for wool than it's been for a long time. And when you get into my sort of wool, very fine top-end merino, we're talking 14, 15 micron merino, the sort of stuff I produce, you're talking about 20 times that at least in value. So there is money to be made out of wool and there is value in it, but there's a lot of blue water to cross before you actually get from production to value.
Thanks, Leslie. Richard, for a commercial flock in Devon, how does wool fit into the balance sheet?
Yeah, to be honest, the wool's just a cost to us as a it's a byproduct almost. There's no real value anymore to the wool. I remember my granddad used to get the wool, and that would pay for like the rent of the farm. Just the shearing day alone costs us £2.50 for the wool and the labour, and that. We're getting less than £1 back from that per sheep. So already we're on a loser without all the other stocking and all the other fly paws. So yeah, to me, it's just a dead loss, to be honest, at the moment, which is a shame because it's a great product.
Thanks, Richard. Peter, you've seen the big picture nationally. Are farmers missing opportunities, or is the market fundamentally broken?
Well, I don't broken. It's just the challenge is if we talk about wool in a sense as a generic term, and Leslie started to differentiate wool within what she was saying, and I think the reality is that there is a marketplace, but we've got to accept the fact that it is only going to be for a very relatively small percentage of what's potentially available. And it'll be a very not straightforward at all, but a commercial decision for some farmers whether they wish to genetically go down a route that allows them to produce that high quality wool and balance that against what they'll lose in other traits from all the other products that a sheep produces. As simple as that, really. And for some, it'll be the right choice. But the reality is probably for the majority, it won't work, whether that's economics or simply because the sheep are in an environment whether they're in lowland or upland, they're in an environment that isn't suited to the genetics that will give the wool. So I don't like the word niche, but as a small percentage of the overall marketplace, we should really be pushing hard and developing the opportunities there. It's not an easy thing to say, but maybe we should just discount a significant percentage of the wool that is produced as being a non-profitable enterprise, and focus our efforts perhaps in promotion on that which can make money and do a better job of that. A lot of commodities have had to do that. That wool is a commodity, you could say, and so any commodity really succeeds when its marketplace is differentiated, and maybe that's where we need to go.
And James, what's your view?
Yeah, I think point, Peter. It is focusing on what matters, because when you look, Richard's already said, the wool doesn't pay for the shearing, and in my sheep keeping experience and looking at people, working with people now keeping sheep, and there are people making that make wool bearing flocks work. Okay, the economics stack up, but to me it seems you've not just got the cost of the wool, have you? You've got all the other costs associated to go with it, which is what Richard said, all the fly paw and things like that. And then it comes on to how many sheep you can keep per man. Now, so I know some of you know Frank Langridge down in Kent. I mean, Frank's always kept a huge number of ewes per man for a very long time, and swears that, his wool clip still pays his rent, so I can't guarantee. I don't know how big his rent is these days. I think he owns the farm, but that's where it is. So I think perhaps there is a niche for it, and how you'd explain it. But generally, overall, I think you've got to look at that one. Have a sheep system that actually pays, and to that you've got to be in the top 20% without the single farm payment. So whatever you do, you've got to get there, and. Then the other thing as well is that I sometimes people say, well, if I go wool share, I have wool all over the field. I don't want wool all over the field. Well, what do you think? Is that really relevant or not? To me, the only place that matters is in the accounts, but in my bank balance. But other people see it differently.
And we also have to remember that if we are going to go down the wool route, these days you've got to do a fair old amount of self-promotion and self-marketing to make it work. So a lot of farmers are not natural marketers.
No.
And just like on the meat side, a lot of people are doing a very good job selling their meat direct. And if you're going to make a go of it with wool, the best way of doing that is to do the same thing, is to go direct to market. And that is very challenging for people. So it's not an easy road, whether you're selling meat direct or whether you're selling wool direct.
Mm.
So all these things need to be considered.
I think it's an interesting, and I'm not coming down on one side or the other, but it is an interesting question that we talk about having wool as a product that maybe the niche and the top end is something that can be profitable. And at the same time, we have a British Wool Marketing Board that has an obligation and a responsibility, and great, to ensure that all wool is marketed. Now, the days of the boards that covered everything and were responsible for all the product that was produced in different commodities, they served their purpose. And I'm not saying for a second that I think the Wool Board, given the task that it's given, does admirably well. But there has to be a question. There has to be a question as to, are we best utilizing the organizations and the structures that we have to ensure that those that make a conscious decision to try and take more money from their wool are in a place to provide it profitably to a marketplace.
Mm.
Maybe that's something that the industry doesn't want to face, but maybe it should ask that question, and perhaps whatever structure supports the wool industry overall is not the one that we currently have. But that's not to say that they're not doing a good job, because I think they are, given the ball that they've been given.
I think that's the point, Peter. The Wool Board is constituted by a parliamentary act in 1950, and what they're allowed to do and what they can do and what they want to do are not necessarily the same things. They're very well aware of their limitations. I think in an ideal world, I can't speak for them, obviously, but I think it's very likely that they'd love to be able to ditch a lot of the low value, low grade wools that they're obliged to take on board and just concentrate on the wools that they know are profitable. And that, of course, is an issue because that's where a lot of the independent wool merchants are able to score, the ones who are going around to farms and just picking and choosing the wool that they want to buy. And that's great because that means they can just go in and say, okay, well, I'll have that, but I won't buy that. Whereas the wool board have to take all of it.
Yeah.
Whatever rubbish somebody chooses to send in, the wool board has to take it and has to deal with it. And that puts their costs up and removes some of their marketing budget. So they are dealt a pretty sticky wicket, really, for doing what they do. And I even though I'm not part of the wool board because they don't deal with merino, I would support them to the hilt, saying that they're doing a very, very good job. And particularly when you compare what's available to people in Europe who are farming sheep, the answer is zero. And we are incredibly lucky to have a marketing board that will take our wool and will deal with it. In Europe, you don't have that. Not a single European country has anything like the equivalent of the wool marketing board. So we should back it when we're able. It's not ideal, but it's all we've got. And unless the Parliamentary Act is changed, and nobody's going to find time for that, there's not much they can do about it at the moment. But they do the best with what they can, and they're well aware of their shortcomings.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Leslie, and you know they're right on our doorstep here in South Molton, aren't they? So we're very lucky with that. But when we're looking at like haulage from further afield farmers, the haulage nearly costs more than their wool is worth. So that's wrong in my opinion. Maybe there should be a free collection almost for the wool board, but I don't think they're willing to do that too much. I see looking into the sales, they've sold like 100% of their hill wool and their 100% of their Romney wool and stuff like that, but like the medium wools they just haven't managed to shift. So you know, some of that hill wool that you wouldn't think would be the best quality, but they've got a market for it and they're selling it quite well. And I think I looked, we're getting about 45p for wool, for Romney wool, and they're selling it greasy for average last month was well over £1, I think. So, you know, they're turning money, they're just turning greasy wool into greasy wool. So, you know, they're doing a good job, but I think there's room for improvement and a bit of fairer distribution maybe is also regarding it's just a lot of work, isn't it? Wool is a lot of work, and you're doing a fantastic job. You've got a really good niche product, and I think the general consensus to everyone else that is supplying into the wool board, they're probably not even doing a very good job of wrapping the wool, cleaning the wool, everything else. So they probably brought a lot of the price problems on themselves. I just see it as a product that we'll take in because it's close. We'll get a payment. It's better than nothing. And I'm quite fastly breeding shedding sheep that don't have any wool because I can run more per man.
I don't have an issue with that at all, Richard, which I think a lot of people looking at what I do would think, oh, you know, she's bound to be pro-wool. Well, I'm pro-wool when it works for everybody. And if it's not working for you, then go the whole hog, get rid of the blasted stuff, you know? We all know it's difficult. I don't have an issue with that. If, you know, whatever you do it professionally to the highest standard that you can. And if that means growing wool, then great. If it's not growing wool, if it's growing shedding sheep, then do that to the highest standard possible as well. And don't go halfway, which is the thing that really gets me. You know, you see these shedding sheep that have been crossed with a wool breed. For goodness sake, what the hell's the point? You know, if it's a shedding sheep, it's a shedding sheep. You can't cross it with a wool sheep and expect the thing still to shed its wool. It won't. So, you know, it's basic laws of genetics. It doesn't work like that. So do it properly. Whether you're growing wool or not growing wool, do it properly.
It's an interesting point, Leslie, isn't it? That and the challenge there from the farming perspective, Richard, I guess, is the fact that if you do it properly, you know, I was involved in different things. when I was sort of taught about what genetic decisions to make, you need to focus probably more on what you throw away than what you gain by making selective breeding choices.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things, of course, from the shedding point of view, is that at the moment, genetics develop, but at the moment you are sacrificing a degree of growth and conformation on your lamb product as a result of choosing shedding sheep. Now, Richard may say that gap is narrowing, and he's probably right, but it still does exist. And so there is that sort of hidden cost to making that shedding choice, reflected in the other products that you get from your sheep, i.e. the meat and the quantity of meat that you get from an animal of different conformations. So the decisions aren't simple, but the answers, once you make a choice, the answers lie in the genetics. It's a breeding choice. It's not something you manage. It's a genetic choice that you choose to make. And it's one that you should be able to decide upon when you consider everything that's on your farm, the environment that you're in, and the products that you're focusing on for your sheep to produce. And once you put all that into perspective, you can make an informed choice, because the options are there for you to do it, and they're all developing, and they're getting better and they're getting better. So it is becoming more of an informed choice. And it just feels to me that the industry has started to think about it as being a choice for various reasons, but there is still an element of the industry that have always been in a place where products have always been catered for, no matter what. And I think some of that still is reflected in the thinking towards wool. It's there. I've produced it, therefore somebody wants it. But it's not the case. But the decisions are all there in the people that breed the sheep.
I think something else we've got to think about is the decline in sheep numbers, not just in the UK, but on a world stage. I'm thinking about Australia in particular at the moment, because obviously that's where I've got particular connections, but it's the same in Europe. Numbers are going down. So to some extent, you were saying about wool, people grow it and they think that because they've grown it, somebody should buy it. At the moment, actually, that is becoming more true. Over the last few months in particular, demand has started to rise again. And because we have smaller numbers of sheep in the world, in the major wool growing countries, demand is beginning to outstrip supply. And for a little while, that will actually look quite good. People will start to think, oh, price is going up, maybe it's worth sticking with wool for a bit. Now, whether that's going to continue, I don't know. And it's worth just bearing that in mind. There's a massive decline in numbers in sheep in Europe and in Australia, and it's more about demand and supply at the moment than it is about true demand. It's supply that's lacking. So that we just have to see how that plays out over the next year, 2 years.
Sorry, just to throw it across to Richard, really. I take on board all that you say there, Leslie. I think it's right. But from the viewpoint of 1,001 sheep farmers out there, if they're making a choice about how to breed their sheep, and they're seeing a carcass with a value of £6 to £7 a kilo currently, and at different times of the year getting higher, and a breeding sheep that, Rich, what you selling, 1.7, 1.8? Along those lines, lamb and
Yeah,
two-thirds?
we'd be about 1.7, probably would be a bit lower, but yeah, around that sort of percentage.
But if that ewe is producing over £200 worth of carcass meat a year.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that even though there may well be a shortage of certain types of wool, from a production point of view, if I was going to focus my efforts, it would be around increasing that by 10%, as opposed to the value of the wool by 10%. That's a simple economics, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I can't argue with that.
Yeah,
at
I
all.
think personally, wool would nearly need to be 20 quid for me to be worrying per ewe to be worrying about wool. The meat trade is what we're in. We are running shedding sheep. They are smaller, but we can run more per hectare. They sell their body weight from the mother. Yeah, we'd nearly wean their body weight. So that's a great indicator that that ewe is working and we're getting live weight per hectare off. And it was done some math somewhere, and the actual figures just add up. And then you're probably looking at, with the shearing, the chemicals, the labour, the docking, we're talking £7 or £8 a ewe just in costs. So that's where I get my £20 a figure really from. Any other business would want the third, and why shouldn't we? Yeah, and yeah, the meat trade is what we're in, and we're pushing for meat. And like you say, the meat is the most valuable bit at the moment. It may change, wool may come back, and I hope it does, to be honest. And because I'm fed up with synthetics, I'm wearing a lovely pair of wool socks here now, and I'm not even producing wool. So that's don't wear any other socks than merino wool socks. So that.
You're wearing my wool there. Yeah. That's good. That's good news.
It's the quality there, isn't it? And
yeah.
I think you'll probably agree, Leslie, with when we reduce the quality of the wool, we probably increase the quality of them, or the actual yield of meat. So it's kind of a balancing act. And like, you're marketing your wool yourself and doing a fantastic job. But like you say, it's another job for a farmer to do. And when I went shearing in Australia, credit to them, they are absolutely on the game out there with their merino wool, and that is what they look to harvest, is the wool.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Richard. Yeah, it's all about quality. It's all about precision genetics, engineering production. It's just as tailor-made, if you like, as the meat genetics side, and making sure that you stay at the top of your game and produce what the market wants. Just like you do in the meat side, you're always looking to see what the market requires from you as a meat producer. Exactly the same applies to the specialist wool producer. We're always keeping our eye, looking over the hedge, seeing what's coming over the horizon. At the moment, we're all worried sick about China and the China-Trump trade war risk, because that has a knock-on effect to the rest of the wool trade. All that. So we're in the same game. We're just on opposite sides of it at the moment.
I think we would be really remiss not to give some acknowledgement to the people farming at the top of the hill. I've been just brazenly saying it's all in the genetics, la-di-da, which is fine. But what options have they got to do anything different from a wool point of view than what they currently do? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know whether the Swales and the Scotch Blackface and the Herdwicks of these worlds, whether they need to be wooled in exactly the way that they are, or whether there is the potential for them to have slightly better quality wool, or could they shed, maintain enough of what they need to stay in their environment. I don't know the answers to those, and are those some of the questions you should be looking at?
I think a lot of that is actually quite well catered for already in specialist marketing, Peter. I mean, I'm thinking particularly, say, like the Herdwicks. There's a phenomenal demand for Herdwick wool, surprisingly enough. They had a really successful marketing campaign for the properties of Herdwick wool, which is basically like Brillo pads. It's not fine wool in any shape or form, but it has a fantastic ability to last and be used for really particular purposes. It makes wonderful rugs and all sorts of other things, and it's the same with the hill breeds, the Swaledales, etc. If you can find the right niche for it, every type of wool has a niche. It's just the case of finding it. This is what British wool are actually doing quite a lot of work on, and they are beginning to find specific markets for specific types of wool. And the advantage that they have is, because of the scale and the number of collection centres that there are, greatly reduced from where it was in 1950, they can get these lots of wool together, collect them together and make commercial size lots, so that people who want to take these projects forward can do so on a commercial scale with properly graded wool. And that is really important. So the British Wool Marketing Board do still have this amazing ability to bring lots of wool together of a consistent quality, so that commercial people can then take that forward as projects. So I think For the hill people, there is definitely potential there. It's just a question of making sure that they get linked up with the right people, and British Wool's doing its best to do that. So there is hope, but there's no doubt that they have it tougher than most.
I just want to go back to a point that Leslie you made earlier on, which was about sort of around niche, and then also farmers directly marketing. And one point I think was about, I don't think there's many farmers in terms of who've got much experience or training in marketing it, and how that training can be brought to them to help them to actually market theirs direct to the consumer. I mean, is there any scope there from anyone?
To be honest, I think that's really a really tough question. If you look at the people like Richard who are selling meat direct, I wonder how many of them have actually done any kind of marketing training. Probably not that many. I haven't either. My marketing experience is based on personal contacts throughout the industry. It's a question of getting yourself out there into the industry that you're trying to sell to. That's my experience. There are no formal training courses that I'm aware of, and they probably wouldn't be very appropriate anyway, because all of this is, the wool industry is a small, tight-knit industry, if you pardon the pun, and it relies very much on personal relationships. And you need to get out there and find out who is looking for your type of wool, in the same way that Richard and other people marketing meat direct need to establish what their local consumers want. What is it that they're looking for? Are they looking for a story? Are they looking for the touchy-feely aspect of what they do? Are they looking for quality? Are they looking for value? Are they looking for all three? You have to understand what it is your consumer wants. It's very difficult to find a marketing course that actually fits that. It's more about learning from other people who've done it before you, really. And in a way, that's not something you can pay for. That's my experience anyway. It is a tricky question, Charlie, and there are a lot of people who will never be very good at it.
Yep.
Some people are naturally good at selling their own product. I think passion is key, isn't it? I mean, Richard's clearly very passionate about what he does. He believes in what he's doing. I'm exactly the same. I love what I do. I love my product. Everybody I know that's successful at doing either what Richard's doing or doing what I'm doing is truly passionate and believes in it. That's the key. If you are really passionate and believe about what you're producing, I think you'll sell it to somebody. That's my view.
I totally agree there, Leslie. It's if you're passionate about your product, it's up to the consumer then really to want to buy it. There's going to be different consumers out there that don't like your story, doesn't want to engage in you. But what we found is they seem to, and once those get onto your story, they want you, and they'll speak more, and they'll ask more, and they'll want more from you, which is quite demanding as well. But social media and everything is quite a marketplace in itself. Like you say, there's marketing training is very difficult, and I don't know very many farmers that are very good at marketing at all. And the actual you can do, like, I've done courses for like social media training and editing of videos and all those sort of things. You can go to those, for actual marketing our product. Yeah, there's probably not anything on the market to dab into, and that's probably because I don't know why there isn't. Maybe it's just because the supermarkets are holding that against us. I don't know, but yeah, there's just they don't really want us to get out there too much and learn too much marketing. I guess uni would be, or there must be college courses that do marketing especially, but when you're a full-time farmer, you don't have time for those things. So it's learn and fail,
Maybe it's
isn't it?
something that ought to be. Yeah, maybe it's something actually that ought to be focused on far more in agricultural colleges. So when young ones are going through, Harper Adams and places like that and doing their courses, perhaps that should be front and centre of any course, to be honest, because I see this going forward, whether you're in meat, wool, chickens, anything else. I see this is going to be the saving grace of farming in years to come. We've got to promote ourselves. we've got to, if you like, we've got to reinforce our social license to farm.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely key to our survival. So that is also about marketing. Social license to farm is all about marketing. We've got to promote ourselves. So maybe there should be far more emphasis on that when the young ones are going through their college courses.
I did do a module on that at university, but we because I was with people who were outside of ag courses, we did it on a computer shop. It was
Right.
quite interesting because this little computer shop compared it with PC World at the time and other ones.
Funny what you say, because when we were doing a lot of work in the past with plantation companies, we were just selling commodities, massive amounts of commodities. But the key to profitability was actually studying the market and knowing when to sell,
Mm.
because you're selling a commodity and you're stuck there's no differentiation. But if you sell at the wrong time, there's £100 a ton difference. So it is like, I mean, time on marketing, that side of it, which as you're saying, not looked at enough. But just going back to the sheep thing about and the mountain feet, the hill breeds. I mean, most of their income really is from selling breeding stock to go further down the hill, isn't it?
Mm.
They're not producing meat in them as per se, are they?
Well, certainly the sale of breeding stock is an important part of what they do. But when if you work on the basis that they'll have a 50-50 split on females and males,
Yeah.
and then they've got their own replacements to produce, which might well be 25% of the females.
Yeah.
Actually, the amount of wether lambs or castrated male lambs that they're going to sell into the meat market is considerable. So, and then with the value that the way in which their value has increased in the last 3 or 4 years, it's an awfully big, significant amount of money from those sales. One of the things I just thinking as we were talking was it's no matter what the product is, if you have a very low product value, it's very difficult to get a marketplace to invest in innovation. And I'm not knowledgeable on this in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that I know wool has a very low value. So why would anybody invest big amounts of money in trying to develop alternative marketplaces? Now, maybe that's already happened, and maybe there's nothing left to investigate, and all the potential uses that can be derived from wool have already been thought of, and and on we go. I don't know. But I wonder if there's something in there. And how do we talk about how the wool board does its job. Innovation in the marketplace, is there any potential there? And the other thing I find interesting is we don't talk enough about the costs of taking wool off farm to a product stage. And I know practices have improved, but undoubtedly how we treat the wool when it's still on the sheep in terms of ways of marking and identifying animals and the way it fits into overall farming practice detracts from the value of the wool. And you care less when it's very low value. And you get that mentality that says, oh, well, I've got it, but I don't really want it. Therefore, you don't really bother about it too much.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if that whole area there is something that because we talk, been perfectly honest, we also talk about the wonderful environmental benefits of wool and what a great natural product it is. Yet we talk very little about the environmental damage that's done in the wool processing process, which it's not a clean process, for want of a better choice of words. It's very difficult.
I would have to dispute that, Peter. Certainly in the UK, that is certainly no longer true. It was years ago, but it's squeaky clean in the UK now as far as processing is concerned. Honestly, you've only got to go around the mills in Yorkshire and see the water that comes out of these processing units now is almost drinking water quality. It's absolutely astonishing. We lead the world on processing standards, so there is no comparison between how wool used to be processed years ago and how it is now. Every single stage is clean. It's amazing. The problem is that puts our costs up massively. And when you compare our processing costs with countries like India, where they do an awful lot of early stage processing of wool, Vietnam is another place.
Mm, yeah.
China is cleaning its act up quickly, but there are still
Yeah.
black spots. But certainly India is a notorious black spot. So, but if we process in the UK and we process British wools from the back of the sheep through to final product in the UK, you can be 99.999% certain you're getting an environmentally safe product out of that. It's something to be very proud of, our processing industry. And as far as innovation is concerned, there's an enormous amount going on. New Zealand, to be honest, is leading the way a lot, leading the charge on strong wools, what we call strong wools, which is where British wool sits. We call British wool typically a strong wool. In other words, it's a coarse wool, 32 micron thereabouts, typically. But New Zealand are making things out of it like plasters, sticking plasters for wounds. So instead of using elastoplast, you now have a wool plaster. Things like that. There are medical products being made out of wool. There are membranes being made that filter certain chemicals through them in medical processes. Incredible innovations, scientific innovations in wool. They're only just beginning to scratch the surface on what wool can actually do. So I think there's a lot to be done. And I get the point about low value products. Why would anybody bother to put a heap of money into it? They only put a heap of money in because they can see money at the other end.
Mhm.
In other words, you buy the raw material cheaply and you can see making
Yeah.
a hell of a packet of money at the other end. Those elastoplasts I was talking about, the wool version, are about 20 times the price of an elastoplast. And people are buying them. They're flying off the shelves. And they're just made from coarse New Zealand wool. So somebody's making money out of that.
Right.
So if you've got the skills, you've got the idea, you can do it. You can take that low value wool product and make a packet out of it. So yes, there's plenty of work there to be done, and there's plenty of work still to be done, but don't knock British processing because it's brilliant. It's very good. I'm very proud of our processing industry in this country. It's very good. They've done a very good job.
Where do they have to haul the wool to? Where are most of the processing?
In the UK, it's up north. It's in Bradford still. That's the centre of the wool trade still. Bradford and the area around that to the west of Bradford. Where all our big mills are and our process. Haworth Scouring is up there. That's our biggest scouring unit. The vast majority of British wool that stays in the UK is cleaned in Haworth Scouring and then goes on to mills from there. So if you've ever been round Haworth Scouring, you'll be astonished. And you were saying about not treating wool very well as it comes off the farm. Well, the stories of what they'll tell you they find in wool when it goes through the wool bath is incredible. Everything from false teeth to fencing pliers to
I've
barbed.
been looking for that, Dan.
Yeah, false teeth. I'm surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if in the past they found the odd body, but you never know what they'd have found in a bale of wool in days gone by. But certainly false teeth turn up quite often.
Yeah. Right. Gosh.
I
Wow.
always think it's very going back, but like you were saying about New Zealand, and New Zealand seemed to be fairly in front. I always find New Zealand, frustratingly, are always 20 years in front of us, and it is frustrating.
Yes.
And I think shedding breeds here have probably been in front New Zealand for a little while, but now they are investing heavily, and some of the most expensive rams, especially in the shedding. I saw there was one last year sold $28,000 a shedding ram in New Zealand, but they're heading more, and they've been Romney very consistently, haven't really altered too much, maybe a bit of Wiltshire and a few other bits, but nothing massive in the shedding side of things. But they are heavily investing now to go shedding. So obviously they are even when that's a bit of a statement to me that when New Zealand start investing heavily to go to shedding breeds, the wool trade's on its knees. And it's sad. It is really sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
But on the other hand, they're the ones that are doing a lot of innovation in wool products as well. So those that are sticking with it are perhaps seeing that as the volume of wool sheep goes down, then maybe the ones that are left can make some money out of it. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. The other thing you've got to remember about New Zealand is that they've always been pushed to do something new because their subsidy system was taken away from them a lot earlier
Yeah.
than ours was. They suddenly had the rug pulled out from under them and farmers were left on
Yeah.
their own. I think, what was that, 10, 15, no, 20
Yeah.
years ago now?
No, 1980 odd, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I know. I had an
long time.
Australian farming friend over the weekend who we met up with
Yeah,
Leslie. He was telling me the same happened when Australia went into the EU. When we went into the EU,
yeah,
and the Australians were told, well, you've got 7 years, and they're going to be, your main market is going, and you're going no
yeah,
subsidy, and they just
yeah,
had to innovate,
yeah.
and
It's the same happened in
there's
New Zealand, definitely. They've
yes,
had
yeah,
to recreate themselves and they've
yeah.
done so with a vengeance.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting, the figures that I've got in front of me, that China now produces about as much wool as Australia does.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Raw wool.
yeah.
So I
They
guess
do.
if anyone's going to innovate and find something to do with raw wool, the Chinese will, and do it very
Yeah,
cheap or
yeah, they
a
do.
big scale.
The quality is the issue in China. They still haven't got the quality there. So 80% of Australian wool is exported into China. In fact, 85% this year.
Yeah.
And it stays there, a lot of it. It doesn't get exported on. They actually use it.
Yeah.
I do hate to say it, but just going back to the medical conversation, it just struck me that maybe New Zealand's trying to put a sticking plaster over the problem.
Well done, Peter. Oh,
Okay,
I haven't got the media laughter on cue for that.
that is
Or
awful.
maybe I'll try this.
It did need false laughter actually to make it work. So.
Well,
Brilliant.
there's also this. I'll see if I can get it to work.
a groan, yes. Yeah.
Well
Have you
done.
heard that?
Bit late that one.
That was right out of the dad joke factory, I think.
Oh, well done.
A lot of the products that are wool will come down to consumers again, isn't it? And what they're willing to pay as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
got several wool jumpers and I like them and they're lovely, but they've got to be washed different. They've got to be, you've got to take a bit more care and pride and in today's society at the moment, it is a bit of a buy cheap, chuck away sort of society, and buy twice or if not 3 times, and it'll, a good wool product will outlive all those synthetic products, and then you can literally put it on your compost heap and it would rot down and it would do no damage to the environment. We got a lot of naysayers saying, the environment is the most important thing, but money still talks, doesn't it? So the alternative is oil synthetic products at the moment, and it will only come down to when these things either get really expensive, wool either gets cheaper, or people really, really care and they have excess money to spend on these products. And at the moment, just like food, just like clothes, they want cheap living. As long as they got Netflix and everything else, that's kind of the mindset of those people need to probably change to make any of these products work.
Yeah, that's very true, Richard. But there are signs that there are changes. If you look at, I'm obviously heavily involved in Campaign for Wool. This is Wool Month. As we're speaking right now, October is Wool Month, and there are large numbers of events going on in London and all over the country promoting wool to the retailers and to consumers beyond retailers, not to farmers, because, it's not about us, it's about promoting to our customers. And that is definitely true. There is a real sign that Gen Z, Generation Z, if you like, taking this on board. They don't trust people anymore. They need stuff proved to them directly. They're far more willing to listen to people who are telling them a genuine story about wool. They want connection. They understand what the messages are about the environment and they're concerned. So they are the generation that are more prepared to buy it. I totally get the point about price. There is no doubt it's pricey. It's a luxury product because it costs a hell of a lot to produce it, not just from our point of view. We get peanuts when you consider about the end price of a garment. But the processing of wool is expensive. It always has been because labour costs are so high. And it is always going to be a luxury product. So it won't ever compete on the same level as an H&M or a Shine jumper or something, a synthetic jumper, but it is a different product. It's a luxury purchase and it's a discretionary purchase, and we have to remember that. So we need to approach it in that way and stop treating it like dirt, because it isn't. It's a luxury fibre for a luxury target audience. I don't think it'll ever be an everyday item anymore. I think those days have long gone. You know, when we were little kids, some of us were brought up in wool jumpers because that's all there was pretty much. Your granny knitted you a woolly jumper and that's what you wore for the whole of the winter.
Gosh.
Nowadays, those days have gone. And they won't
They
come
haven't
back.
gone here.
So wool...
Nan's
No.
still
Yeah,
going,
well, I'm still wearing
knitting
this.
mad.
There's one.
Yeah,
There's wool.
well done.
I'm in wool
Great,
too.
well
Yes,
done.
yes.
This one's 40 years old, the one I'm wearing, and it's done 5 lambing seasons. This was my dad's jumper, and it's
Right.
just done the last 5
Yeah.
lambing seasons, and it's still going
Yeah.
strong. So, yeah, but there is a change. There's what you might call a sea
Yeah.
change. So there is hope, but it's never going to be like it used to be, and we'd be fools to think that it is.
Yes, yeah. But Leslie, you're getting your wools. You're selling wool to Italy for spinning there now, and I
Yeah.
got involved in a project 3 or 4 years ago. We were looking at trying to revive quality flax production in this country and the spinning. And when we looked into that, you know, the actual spinning now, they can't spin well. No, they can do the spinning in Bradford, they can do the weaving in Bradford, but we're going to have to send the stuff to China anyway to get it spun, even if we're producing back. Perhaps the problem is that we've got such a breakdown of the industry up in the north, in Brown Bradford, that, you know, there's no steps to get the high quality wool from the sheep to the consumer's back.
What you have to remember, James, is that for my type of wool, and we're talking here at the highest level of wool here, we're talking about the finest of the fine. You know, merino is a broad church. Merino runs from roughly, the finest wool at the moment is about 10 microns, and it goes right the way up to 22, 23, and that's where it falls off. Beyond that, it's not classifiable as merino. So anywhere below that is merino, but there's a huge range in there. Now, in the UK, if you wanted merino spun in the UK, you can only really get it spun if it's 18 micron and above. Processed. They're not really able to do the finer stuff, but they never have done historically. In Bradford, they have never, right back to the Middle Ages when we were processing wool in this country, the finest wool that we produced in the Middle Ages was always exported to Europe and also to this particular region in Italy called Biella, the Biellese region in Tuscany. Always processed Europe's finest wool because that's where the expertise was. It's always, since the Middle Ages, been an international trade.
Yeah.
So Bradford has always done a fantastic job processing typically British wool from the Industrial Revolution onwards. So they're just carrying on to do what they've always done. So there hasn't been a breakdown in the wool side. From the flax side, we never had a major industry producing flax in this country. No. That was always in Ireland. And the key thing about flax production is you need to add in the retting step. And that is the big problem. We don't have facilities for that.
No, we don't. This is the difference, actually. I'm not talking about the flax. It comes down to field retting now.
Yes.
And the difference is you can do that in northern France. You can do it. And we've now got growers coming over from France and Holland, renting land in East Anglia to grow flax.
Really?
Yes. And rest it in the field. And it was just, anyway, that's another subject. But they are doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, that's good.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
But yes, in terms of processing, that just got me thinking, because with technology now, like, just think about meat, because there's a decrease in abattoirs, but there's someone in Devon looking at building a mobile abattoir. And is there any technology in the world in terms of making wool processing that you could do on a small scale?
Yeah, I've heard this story so often, Charlie. The problem with this is the world and his wife wants to invent a small spinning mill, and there are a lot of them about. There are already what we call mini mills. There are several mini mills in the UK. There are facilities for processing on a small scale. The problem is British wool is so diverse that it's really difficult to process wool in a one-size-fits-all system. It's a very specialised job processing British wool. You think we've got a minimum of 60 plus breeds in this country, plus all the crosses. Every one of those animals produces a different type of wool. There are difference in length of staple, difference in curvature, difference in grease content. All of them need processing slightly differently to get a very good result. It's very easy to process wool through a mini mill system and make a complete hash of it and produce a product that's no use to anybody much. Yeah. So small is not necessarily beautiful, and small is also incredibly expensive, which is why everybody moved away from local processing in the first place. When you think about Bradford, why does Bradford exist? It exists because processing wool in Tiverton, as it used to be done, was expensive. It was cheaper to do it en masse in Bradford, where they had access to coal for producing steam. They had the local Pennine water. They had everything they needed. They had expertise in the labour. Centralising production made sense, and the expertise centralised up there as well. So small scale, no, I don't think there's much of a future, apart from small scale artisan production. And we're not really talking about that. We're talking about what our everyday commercial farmers want to do with their wool. Smallholders, yeah, maybe they'll go and use a mini mill. But for those of us who are serious about wool, no way.
Which again is like in New Zealand, they had just Romneys, didn't they?
We've spoken a bit about sustainability, but I would just like to know if you think that we are promoting the sustainability of wool in Britain enough.
So I just jump in quickly there because I've just recently been involved with some work from Australia on biogenic carbon. They've done a project on our farm, which they started in Australia, and they've done the Northern Hemisphere version of it in our farm, assessing the way in which carbon is a circular process on the farm. The results just speak for themselves that wool is a fantastic product for the environment. It really is. And we just don't push that enough. If you want to do the right thing for the planet, then you should be using wool and other natural fibres, not synthetics, which were never meant to come out of the ground in the first place. Oil was meant to be locked up. It's carbon that was meant to stay underground, and we've just dragged it out and used it.
Right.
Whereas wool has always been meant to be circular. So I don't know what, Peter and Richard, what do you think?
Well, I guess if you look at all the products that have displaced wool in various uses, they all come back to oil, don't they?
Yeah. Yes.
Oil it sits at the heart of it, and
Yes.
I don't know how far,
Yes.
Obviously the rumblings around oil that we hear at the moment is all about petrol and diesel and all the rest of it. And some mention made of synthetic products and plastics and all the rest that depend on oil. But I guess that chatter is going to increase over time. And, I don't know how far down the world's oil supplies we've got, but at some point it's going to run out. And at some point, all those products that rely on it are going to have an alternative. Whether we'll still have sheep with wool on to fill any part of that gap, and whether it's even feasible to think that the financial aspect will stack up, I don't know. But I don't know. Is there enough made of the fact that oil displaced the sheep? I don't know.
AWI, the equivalent of British wool in Australia, did a fantastic advert, which was shown quite a lot on British television, actually. And all over the underground in London, it was everywhere. Piccadilly Circus, everywhere. It was this amazing video. And the whole premise of it was wear wool, not oil.
Yeah.
And it showed people sort of swimming out of a swamp of oil, covered in oil. And that's what they were wearing all the time. Everybody was, you just walk, every time you walk around, you're looking at people covered in oil. That's what they're actually wearing.
Well, that's the
You know,
reality,
he's-
isn't it? Yeah.
That's the
Well,
reality of
I'm
it.
looking.
You know, what would you
I'm looking
rather?
forward to it, Leslie, when you come past on your horse next week instead of that guzzly diesel you go past. But
No, that's right. Yeah, I
you know,
know.
all joking aside, I think
Yeah.
it's it's very good sustainable product, and it's not shouted about enough. It grows again. You know, you shear it off and it grows again. It has no harm to the sheep, and you know, you've got this
No.
fantastic product. Unfortunately, it costs a lot to get it from sheep to the actual product, and that's the biggest problem at the moment, isn't it? Whereas
Mm.
you know, and it gives me no incentive to increase my wool production at all. It gives me incentive to keep more sheep without wool at the moment because of the price that we're getting, because it doesn't sum up. So, you know, I like the product, I use the product, but I don't grow the product because I don't get enough for the product. So it's
Exactly.
it's a double-edged sword a bit, isn't it, at the moment? And
Mm.
it, like you say, it might be too late if oil does run out and people need clothing and everything else. You know, there wouldn't even be probably enough sheep in the world now to grow enough
No.
for clothing anyway, let alone anything else. So it's one of it's sad how we've got into this position, and I can't express that enough, really. And you know, going forwards, I hope we'll pick up, and one day I might be growing it again. But until that day comes, then I think sometimes a shortage always helps the price, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep. Sure.
Well, it was basically because most of the sheep in this country before the wool trade really got going weren't woolly, and the wool was bred on them for the sheep for the wool trade. You know, back in the medieval times. So we bred on of one, we'll breed it off now, and then breed it back on again when it's
Yeah, more than
required, I
likely.
guess.
More than likely. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
can I give that? Was that sort of 600-700 years ago? If we're all here to
Yes.
have this debate in 600 or 700 years' time, then technology will have moved on tremendously. We may have a few more wrinkles and be slightly
Yeah.
less coherent. Well, I'm not sure we're that coherent now, but slightly less coherent again. But that would
I
be a
wonder if we'll
challenge
still
worth
be wearing the
accepting.
same. We'll still be wearing the same wool jumper.
And you'll still
probably.
have your same wool jumper
Same
on.
wool
Leslie.
jumper on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you've done 574 lambings by that point.
Yeah.
On horseback.
What a thought. What a thought.
yes. From my shepherd's hut.
Yeah.
By candlelight.
Okay.
It's not bad
Dear
thinking about it,
Anthony.
really, does it? When you go back to it, thinking how it was
Well, it
done.
goes round and
Yeah.
round, doesn't
I
it?
can't-
Like you know, things are going round in circles all the time. You know,
Yeah, they
we're
are.
lambing outdoors now. Well, my great granddad and everything else were lambing outdoors. We went indoors. We've gone in sheds. We've gone back out. You know, it goes round. We've ripped out hedges after the war. I'm now putting them back in. You know, all these things. We're going round in circles, and I can see wool coming
Sam,
back. Sorry.
I think you might have run out of data for it, or who knows?
Oh, right. Okay.
Or,
Oh dear.
I don't
Okay.
think he's muted.
Was I muted?
You're back on now.
Sorry.
Yeah.
back.
I was having a lovely conversation
That's
with
all right.
myself.
Well, come on, we'll carry on then, Richard.
You're
We'll
in
hear the
full
rest of
flow,
it.
Richard. You're in full flow, very expressive.
Yes.
Oh, why did it go on mute? What did you hear? I was just saying it was going around in full circles.
Maybe you said something offensive. Who
Yeah,
knows?
full
I don't know.
circle.
That.
Yes.
I was saying about how we're going around in full circles, basically, and like we've ripped out hedges and now we're planting hedges, and you know we've lambed indoors and now we're outdoors. So it kind of goes round and round.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting where it goes, and I'm sure we'll come back round quite prominently and quite strongly. It's just when and if we will see it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Well, the high prices make low prices, and vice versa.
I have a feeling we might see.
Some circles are longer than others. That's all.
I missed that, Peter.
I say some cycles are longer than others. That's all.
Yeah.
Yes.
That brings us to a nice point to wrap up on. And to finish, I would just like to get all of you and your perspective on the future of wool, and start with Leslie.
Well, I definitely think that certainly there is a good future for it. I see light at the end of the tunnel for all types of wool, not just mine. There is this Gen Z thing, people are beginning to wake up to the value of it as the way forward out of a lot of our problems with the environment. And certainly for my particular niche end, I see the future as very bright, given an emphasis on quality and professionalism. And those two things are absolutely key. Whether you're doing wool or meat or anything else, quality, 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 and being utterly professional about it. There's no room for amateurism in this day and age in any kind of farming, in my view. So that's my 5 pence there.
Okay.
Thanks, Leslie. And Richard.
Yeah, no, I agree with Leslie there. Like, you've got to be
He's gone mute again.
He's gone mute again. Well, mute him and then...
Sorry, am I
Hold on.
working?
Try again, Richard.
Yeah, hello? No?
People don't want to hear your views, obviously.
I have lots of views. Is it working? No. Why is that?
I think he's saying I had fish and chips for my supper, but I'd like a pint of beer.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
know why that's done that.
Right.
We can try and lip read, but... Sorry, I hand over to you, Peter, for your perspective.
Surprisingly, not surprising at all, but very, very similar from Leslie's point of view. I think that it's a marketplace that does differentiate itself. The reality is that for everybody that's in a wool supply chain, the chances of everybody making profit out of that on the vast majority of the product that's produced is very small, and is certainly a long, long way in the future. It would be a very sad day to see too big a percentage of the sheep not having the wool taken from them to do something with. But at the moment, the trend is clear, and the trend is moving at a reasonable pace as people make what you might say are short-term financial decisions to improve the returns they get from the wool and reduce the costs that they have incurred by that wool. And that's what it boils down to. And, in fairness, when you look at it in black and white like that, it's very difficult. As Leslie said, you can't blame any farmer for going down the route that they go down unless they've got the marketplace for that high value wool. Nobody should be expected or presumed to do anything in their business for nothing. Otherwise, it's not a business. And we'll come back to choice, and we'll come back to people making business decisions, short, medium, and long term, about what the right thing to do is for their business. And that's what it'll boil down to.
Yeah, on what Peter and Leslie, and I think Richard have said, really, from what I can say from his point, he was mouthing that, it does come down to farming's a business. It's not a hobby. It's not something that you do unless you've got a lot of money and just looking to, the old adage, how do you make a small fortune out of farming? Start with a large one. If you're trying to make money out of farming, then as Peter and Leslie said, Leslie said, you've got to do it professionalism and passion. Make the decisions that are right for you. Going wool shedding is right for some people. It's not going to be right for others. But whatever you're doing, just do it to the best of your ability, and look, and don't just get stuck on tradition. Look at what's happening in the market around you and take advantage of everything that's out there to help you do it.
Richard, we'll just try one more time to see if we can get your sound
Does
again.
that come or no? No.
No. It may be if you turn off your camera.
I've sent a chat.
Try
I don't
again.
know if you've seen it, but maybe not.
No. But I think Richard just said in the comments, he said that he thinks that wool has a future and he'll keep supporting wool products. However, he'll be professional producing wool shedders. Thank you, Leslie, Richard, Peter and James, for joining me today. It's clear that wool sparks strong opinions, and while the financial returns are challenging, there are glimmers of opportunity if the industry and perhaps consumers are willing to see wool differently. Thank you to all of you for listening to Stick to Farming. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to learn more about how Siggs & Co supports farmers across the Southwest, visit our website. Until next time, I'm Charlie Siggs, and remember, whatever the challenges, stick to farming.